Princess stood in the grand hall of the imperial palace, her purple robes flowing around her like water. She was beautiful by any standard, with dark eyes that held the weight of 10,000 years of royal bloodline. Today, those eyes were cold as she watched the human delegation approach. The Empire had ruled 3 star systems for longer than most species had been traveling in space. Their ships were elegant, their technology refined to perfection, their warriors trained in combat forms that had been passed down through centuries. They were proud, ancient, and powerful. Humans were none of these things. His grandmother, the Empress, had arranged this marriage. The humans had resources that the Empire needed, rare minerals from their outer colonies, strategic positions near the contested border zones, trade routes that could benefit both peoples. It was practical, logical, and completely political. Hated it. She watched as the human delegation walked across the polished floor. They moved without grace, their clothing simple and plain compared to the flowing robes of the court. At the front walked a man who must be her intended consort. He was average height for a human, with dark hair and calm eyes. He wore what humans considered formal attire, but it looked almost boring next to the splendor around him. His name was. He worked on human ships, something to do with engineering, had read his file without much interest. He seemed completely ordinary in every way. The delegation stopped before the throne. The human ambassador bowed and followed suit. It was a respectful gesture, but notice it lacked the flowing elegance that nobles used. Everything about these humans seemed rough and unpolished. "Your Imperial Majesty," the ambassador said, "we present chosen representative of humanity to be joined in union with Princess." The Empress nodded regally. "We accept this offering and welcome the alliance between our peoples." Offering, as if was a gift being presented. Suppose that was accurate enough. She was being given a human husband to cement a political alliance. He was being given a princess for the same reason. Neither of them had much choice in the matter. Later was required to meet with privately. They sat in one of the smaller reception rooms, with guards at a respectful distance. Looked uncomfortable in the ornate chair, like he would rather be somewhere else. "I know this is not what you wanted," he said quietly. His voice was softer than she expected. "I'm sorry." Blinked in surprise. An apology was not what she had expected. "You have nothing to apologize for. We are both serving our peoples." "True," said, "but that does not make it easier." They talked for a while, awkward and formal, asked polite questions about culture, answered them with practiced ease. She asked about his work, and he explained that he designed systems for human vessels, something technical that she only half listened to. He seemed nice enough. Boring, perhaps, but not unpleasant. That somehow made it worse. Had hoped for someone with at least a spark of fire, someone interesting. Instead, she was getting the most unremarkable human in the galaxy. The wedding ceremony came too quickly. It blended traditions from both cultures in a way that satisfied no one but offended no one. Wore 7 layers of purple silk, each layer representing a different virtue of the royal house. Wore a simple black suit that humans considered formal. They stood before the Empress and the human ambassador. Words were spoken in both languages. Promises were made. Rings were exchanged. And just like that was married to a stranger. The reception was enormous. Thousands of guests filled the palace halls. Nobles mingled with human diplomats. Everyone was very polite, very careful, very fake. Smiled until her face hurt and accepted congratulations from people who did not mean them. Stayed close to her side as was expected. He spoke when spoken to but did not draw attention to himself. When's cousin, Prince, made subtle comments about human weakness, just smiled and changed the subject. When others praised superiority, he nodded politely and said nothing. At one point, the Imperial Guard performed a demonstration of their combat forms. It was beautiful to watch, each movement precise and deadly. The guards moved in perfect coordination, their practice weapons whistling through the air in patterns that had been perfected over. The crowd applauded, glanced at, curious about his reaction. He was watching with genuine interest, his eyes tracking the movements carefully. When he noticed her looking, he smiled. "That was impressive," he said. "The discipline required must be incredible." "It takes decades to master," replied. "Each guard trains from childhood." "I can tell," said. "The precision is remarkable." Waited for him to boast about human warriors, to make some claim about his own people's abilities. But he said nothing more, just continued watching the demonstration with quiet appreciation. It was frustrating. She wanted him to push back, to show some pride in his own culture. Instead, he just accepted everything with that calm, pleasant demeanor, like he was perfectly comfortable being the least important person in the room. The reception lasted hours. By the end, was exhausted from smiling and making small talk. Looked tired too, though he had done much less talking than she had. Finally, they were allowed to retire to their quarters. The palace had prepared rooms for them, separate bedrooms connected by a shared living space. It was a compromise between human and customs. "Thank you for today," said as they stood in the living area. "I know this was difficult." "It was my duty," replied automatically. "Still," he said, "you handled it with grace. I appreciate that." Studied him for a moment. He seemed sincere, which somehow made everything more complicated. It would be easier if he was awful, if she had a reason to dislike him. Instead, he was just nice, ordinary, unremarkable. "Good night," she said. "Good night." She went to her room and closed the door. Sitting on the edge of her bed, still wearing her wedding robes, allowed herself a moment of honest emotion. She felt disappointed, though she could not quite explain why. She had married a human engineer, a quiet, polite man who designed ship systems and seemed perfectly content to fade into the background. He was not cruel or stupid or difficult. He was just ordinary. Had been trained her entire life to be extraordinary. She was a princess of the oldest empire in the galaxy. She had expected to marry someone equally remarkable, or at least someone interesting. Instead, she had married the most boring human she could imagine. She did not know yet how wrong she was. She did not know what really was, what he had been, what he could become when necessary. She did not know that the quiet engineer in the next room was far more dangerous than anyone in the palace suspected. She would learn soon enough. The galaxy had a way of revealing truths that people tried to hide, and had hidden his very well. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding, and were on a diplomatic tour of the border systems, traveling with a small fleet. 2 cruisers and 1 human escort ship made up their convoy. It was supposed to be a peaceful journey, showing the alliance between their peoples to the outer colonies. Had grown somewhat used to his presence. He was a quiet companion, reading technical manuals in the evenings and asking thoughtful questions about the systems they visited. He never complained, never demanded attention, never caused problems. He remained perfectly, consistently ordinary. They were passing through the outer reach when the alarm started screaming. Rushed to the bridge of their flagship, right behind her. Captain Minu, commander of the Imperial Guard, was already shouting orders to his crew. The showed a nightmare. 12 ships had appeared from behind a nearby gas giant, weapons already firing. "Pirates," Captain Minu said grimly. "The Red Wing fleet. They've been raiding this sector for months." The cruisers moved into their defensive formation. It was a pattern that had been used for thousands of years, elegant and efficient. The ships positioned themselves to maximize shield coverage while maintaining clear firing lines. It was beautiful to watch, like a dance. The pirate ships did not dance. They swarmed like angry insects, firing from multiple angles at once. Their weapons hammered against the shields, which shimmered and held under the assault. Gripped the railing on the bridge, trying to keep her face calm. This was her first real combat situation. She had trained for it, studied it, but experiencing it was completely different. Her heart pounded in her chest. She glanced at. He stood a few feet away, staring at the tactical display with an intensity she had never seen from him before. His entire body had changed. The relaxed, casual posture was gone. He stood like a coiled spring, every muscle tense and ready. "They're using attack pattern Delta 7, said quietly. His voice had changed too. It was harder now, sharp. Modified with a 3-ship rotation. They'll breach your shields in 4 minutes. Captain Minu turned to glare at him. "The Imperial Guard has defended against raiders for 3,000 years. We do not need advice from." 3 minutes 50 seconds, interrupted. His eyes never left the display. "Your shield harmonics are beautiful but predictable. They've studied you. They know exactly where to focus their fire." Watch the tactical display. The pirates were indeed concentrating their attacks in a rotating pattern, each group of 3 ships firing at the same shield section before moving to the next. It was crude but effective. One of the cruisers shuddered under a particularly heavy barrage. Its shields flickered, dropping to 70%. The crew was already working to reinforce them, but the pirates pressed their advantage. Turned to face directly, his eyes were different now. They held something she had not seen before: authority, command, and something else that looked almost like danger. "Princess," he said, "I need to contact the human escort ship, right now." Captain Minu started to protest, but raised her hand. Something in his voice, in the way he carried himself now, made her trust him. "Do it," she said. Moved to the communications console. The officer there hesitated, looking at Captain Minu. The captain nodded reluctantly. Opened a channel to the human vessel, the UHSV Indomitable. "Indomitable, this is. Authorization code Delteco 77, going loud." There was a brief pause. Then a human voice responded, crisp and military. "Confirmed, sir. Releasing all protocols. All safeties are off. God help them." Stared at her husband. "Sir, authorization codes, what was happening?" The human ship's reactor signature suddenly spiked on the sensors. Numbers that should have been impossible appeared on the screens. The crew members looked at each other in confusion and alarm. "What is that ship doing?" Captain Minu demanded. "Those power levels will destroy their reactor." But the Indomitable did not explode. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the pirate fleet, not at the careful, measured pace of ships, but with violent, aggressive speed. The ship moved like it was angry. "That vessel will be torn apart," Captain Minu said. "They're charging directly into concentrated fire." Watched in horror as the human ship dove into the midst of the pirate formation. Weapons fire from 6 different raider ships converged on it. The Indomitable's shields flared bright white, absorbing punishment that should have vaporized it. But the human ship did not follow any pattern. It twisted and turned in ways that seemed almost random. There was no elegance, no traditional formation, just pure chaotic movement that made it nearly impossible to predict where it would be next. Then the Indomitable opened fire. The weapons were nothing like technology. Instead of refined energy beams, the human ship unleashed kinetic projectiles, missile swarms, and explosive rounds that detonated in chains. It was brutal, ugly, and terrifyingly effective. 3 pirate ships simply ceased to exist in the first 30 seconds. Had moved to another console, his fingers flying over the controls. He was speaking rapidly into the comm channel, using codes and terms that did not recognize. Indomitable, execute broken arrow formation. Target clusters Alpha through Delta. Authorization for nuclear-tipped warheads approved. Keep them sub-kiloton, we have friendlies in the area. Nuclear, Captain Minu's face went pale. Those weapons are banned by every civilized species. Not by humans, said without looking up. We never had the luxury of banning weapons that work. Felt like she was seeing her husband for the first time. This was not the quiet engineer who read manuals in the evenings. This was someone else entirely. Someone who gave orders with absolute authority. Someone who spoke of nuclear weapons like they were normal tools. She said carefully, "What exactly was your position in the human fleet?" He glanced at her briefly. His eyes held an apology, but his voice remained hard and focused. "I'll explain everything later. Right now, I need you to trust me. Order your ships to fall back to the coordinates I'm sending to Captain Minu. The Indomitable is going to do something your sensors won't like." Looked at Captain Minu. The old warrior's face was a mixture of shock and reluctant respect. He nodded slightly, gave the order. The cruisers pulled back, moving to the coordinates had provided. The human ship continued its aggressive assault on the pirate fleet. 2 more raider ships exploded. The others were trying to flee now, realizing they had made a terrible mistake. But one pirate captain, desperate or insane, turned his ship directly towards flagship. A suicide run. The damaged vessel accelerated, aiming to ram them. Captain Minu's crew scrambled to respond, but they were out of position. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Indomitable, intercept course, ramming speed." "Sir, that will." The human ship's captain started to protest. "Do it," commanded, "now." The human ship changed course with impossible speed. It positioned itself between the pirate vessel and the flagship. The 2 ships collided at speeds that should have destroyed them both. The Indomitable's reinforced prow hit the pirate cruiser like a hammer. Metal screamed and tore. The pirate ship crumpled, its hull collapsing under the impact. The human vessel's shields flared white-hot, so bright that the sensors temporarily overloaded. When the glare faded, the pirate ship was tumbling debris. The Indomitable emerged on the other side, battered and but still functional. Its armor plating was dented, systems were failing, but it had survived. The remaining pirates broke. They fled into hyperspace, abandoning their damaged companions. Silence fell over the bridge. Everyone stared at the tactical display, at the wreckage of 7 destroyed pirate ships, at the damaged but victorious human vessel. Turned slowly to look at her husband. Stood at the console, breathing hard, his calm mask finally cracked. He looked exhausted and relieved and still dangerous. "Captain Minu," said quietly, "please escort my consort and me to my private quarters." "Yes, Your Highness," the captain replied. As they walked through the corridors, crew members stared at with new eyes. The quiet human engineer who had been so easy to dismiss now looked like something else entirely. His mind was racing. Who had she married? What had she married? And why had he hidden this from everyone? She was about to find out. The door to his quarters closed behind them with a soft hiss. She stood in the center of the room, her hands clenched at her sides, trying to control the anger and confusion swirling inside her. Remained near the door, his posture returning to that calm, unassuming stance she had grown used to, but could no longer see him the way she had before. The mask had cracked, and she had glimpsed what lay underneath. "You lied to me," she said, keeping her voice level with effort. "No," replied quietly, "I never lied, I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing." "Is it?" He moved further into the room, sitting down on one of the chairs without asking permission. The casual disrespect to her rank should have angered her, but somehow it didn't. If someone asks if you're a princess and you say yes, but don't mention that you're also trained in 17 forms of combat, is that a lie? Sat down across from him. "You're not just an engineer." "I am an engineer," said. "I design ship systems, weapons systems specifically. I've been doing it for 4 years now." "And before that?" He was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "Before that, I was a Commodore in the Human Defense Fleet. I commanded destroyer squadrons in the Outer Rim conflicts, 43 major engagements, hundreds of smaller actions. I lost count of those." Felt her breath catch. A Commodore. That was a high rank in human military structure. He had commanded entire groups of warships. He had fought in dozens of battles. Why didn't you tell me this? Why hide it? Leaned back in his chair, looking tired. Would it have mattered? Your people look down on human military service. We're seen as crude, violent, uncivilized barbarians who don't understand the elegant art of warfare. I've heard the comments from your court, the jokes about human aggression, the superiority in every voice when someone mentions human combat tactics. Wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. He was right. The court did view human warfare as primitive and brutal. She herself had thought that way. I was trying to be acceptable, continued. The diplomatic corps recruited me for this marriage alliance because I understand both combat and engineering. They thought it would be useful, but they also made it clear that I should not advertise my military background. It would make your people uncomfortable. So you pretended to be harmless. I pretended to be what everyone wanted to see, he corrected. A quiet engineer, non-threatening, easy to dismiss. It made the court happy. It made you comfortable. It served the alliance. Until today. Until today, he agreed, when pretending stopped being an option. Stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. In the distance, she could see the damaged hull of the Indomitable being moved into position for emergency repairs. The human ship looked like it had been through a war, which she supposed it had. What I saw today, she said slowly, was not crude or primitive, it was terrifying. Yes, said simply. Your ship used weapons that should have torn itself apart. It moved in ways that violated every tactical principle I've ever learned. It rammed an enemy vessel like it was a normal thing to do. She turned to face him. And it worked. You destroyed 7 pirate ships in minutes. You made them flee in terror. Stood and joined her at the viewport. Humans didn't have 10,000 years of peace to develop elegant combat forms. We've been fighting since we learned to make fire. Fighting each other, fighting our environment, and now fighting aliens who had technology we could only dream of. We had to learn fast, adapt faster, and use every advantage we could find. Even advantages that other species consider barbaric. Especially those, he said. The galaxy has rules about warfare, civilized rules, no weapons of mass destruction, no ramming maneuvers, no desperate tactics. Fight with honor, fight with grace, and if you lose, accept it with dignity. And humans don't follow these rules. We can't afford to, said quietly. When humanity entered the galactic community, we were weak. Our ships were inferior, our technology primitive, our numbers small. Every species we encountered was stronger, more advanced, more established. The only advantage we had was that we didn't know we were supposed to lose gracefully. He pointed at the Indomitable. That ship is designed with one assumption. It will be outnumbered and fighting for its life. So it's built to take punishment that would destroy any other vessel. It carries weapons that civilized species banned ago. It has protocols for ramming, for self-destruction, for fighting even when everything is failing. Because humans learned a long time ago that the universe doesn't care about fair fights. Was quiet for a moment, processing this. Your people sound paranoid. We are, said without shame. Paranoid and desperate and innovative. We build redundancy into everything. We train for worst-case scenarios. We assume that anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and we plan accordingly. It makes us exhausting to fight because we never quit. The pirates knew this. The pirates have fought humans before, said. They know our reputation. They thought they could hit a convoy and be gone before the humans got involved. When I activated combat protocols, they realized their mistake. They'd poked a sleeping predator. Is that how you see yourself, a predator? Turned to look at her directly. I'm a man who wants peace. I left the military to pursue that. I married you hoping to build something better than war. But his voice hardened. If something threatens what I'm protecting, then yes, I become a predator, a very efficient one. Studied his face. The quiet engineer and the battle-hardened commander existed in the same person. It should have been impossible, but humans were apparently very good at being contradictory. "How many ships have you destroyed?" she asked. "I stopped counting after my first year of command," he said. "Dozens, at least, maybe more than 100 if you count smaller vessels." "How many people have you killed?" "I don't know," said quietly. "I try not to think about it. Every captain I ever served with tries not to think about it. We do what we have to do, and then we carry it with us." There was pain in his voice, old and deep. Realized that the battles had cost him something. He wasn't a mindless killing machine. He was someone who had done terrible things out of necessity and paid a price for it. "The human ship's captain called you sir," she said, "even though you're retired." "Once a commander, always a commander," said. "It's a human military tradition. Those who led in combat never fully leave the service. We're reserves, ready to be called back if needed." "Is that what happened today? You were called back?" "No," he said. "Today I gave orders to protect my wife. The captain of the Indomitable followed them because he trusts my experience, and because he knew I was right." Walked back to her chair and sat down. Her legs felt weak. Everything she thought she knew about her husband had been wrong. She had married what she thought was a nobody, someone her court could dismiss and ignore. Instead, she had married a decorated war commander, someone who had fought in more battles than most warriors saw in their entire lives, someone who could coordinate the destruction of an enemy fleet with cold precision. "What are you really?" she asked. He sat down across from her again. "I'm both the man you married and the warrior you saw today. Humans contain multitudes. We can be gentle and violent, kind and ruthless, peaceful and warlike. It's what makes us human. It's what makes us survive." "That sounds exhausting." "It is," he admitted. "But it's also what makes us valuable as allies. We understand peace because we've fought so hard for it. We value civilization because we know what the alternative looks like. And when that civilization is threatened, we know how to defend it." Thought about the pirate attack, about how quickly had shifted from quiet consort to combat commander, about how the human ship had fought with such ferocity that even she had been frightened. "Your people are dangerous," she said. "Yes," agreed. "We're very dangerous. The pirates will spread word about what happened today. They'll tell other raiders that attacking convoys means facing human retaliation. That's worth more than any diplomatic treaty." "You planned this?" "No," he said, "but I'm not surprised it happened. The border regions are dangerous. I was prepared for it. I've always been prepared for it." Looked at her husband with new eyes. She had thought him boring, ordinary, unremarkable. Now she understood that he had been hiding in plain sight, letting everyone underestimate him. It was, she realized, a very effective strategy. "The court will react badly to this," she said. "They'll see you as a threat now." "I know," said, "but I'd rather have them see me as a threat than have you be dead. I can handle their fear. I can't handle losing you." The simple honesty in his voice caught her off guard. Despite everything, despite the lies of omission and the hidden past, he genuinely cared about keeping her safe. "What happens now?" asked. "Now," said, "we continue the diplomatic tour. We present a united front, and I go back to being a quiet engineer who reads technical manuals and doesn't cause trouble." "Can you do that after this?" He smiled, and it was sad. "I've been doing it for 4 years. I'm very good at pretending to be harmless." But would never see him as harmless again. None of them would. Word of the pirate engagement spread through both human and space like wildfire. The official reports were carefully worded, emphasizing cooperation between allied forces and the successful defense of the diplomatic convoy. But the unofficial stories told a different tale. In spacer bars across a dozen systems, people spoke in whispers about the human consort who had revealed himself as a war hero, About the human ship that had fought like a cornered animal and won. About the princess who had watched her husband coordinate a battle with the precision of someone who had done it 100 times before. Heard the stories. They reached even the imperial palace, carried by traders and merchants and gossip-hungry nobles. Each telling was more dramatic than the last. Some claimed had single-handedly destroyed all the pirate ships. Others said he had commanded a secret human battle fleet. The truth was impressive enough without exaggeration, but humans loved a good story. She watched during the formal dinners and court functions that followed their return. He had slipped back into his role as quiet engineer, deferring to customs, speaking softly when addressed, but now could see what she had missed before. The way his eyes constantly tracked movements around the room, the careful positioning that gave him clear sight lines to all exits, the calm that came not from weakness but from absolute confidence. He was still pretending to be harmless, but everyone who looked at him now saw something else. Prince approached them at a state dinner. His cousin was wearing his dress uniform, covered in medals from ceremonial duels and honor competitions. He had been one of the most dismissive of humans at the wedding. Now his expression held something that might have been respect. He said formally, "I've heard interesting stories about the pirate encounter." "I'm sure they're exaggerated, Your Highness," replied mildly, taking a sip of his drink. "Is it true your ship rammed an enemy vessel?" The captain of the Indomitable made a tactical decision to intercept a threat to Princess. It was effective. Studied him carefully. "I've fought in 7 ceremonial duels. I'm considered one of the finest warriors in the Empire. My training began when I was 5 years old." "I'm sure you are very skilled, Your Highness." "How many actual battles have you fought in?" Set down his glass. His voice remained pleasant, but something changed in his eyes. 43 major ship engagements, several hundred smaller actions. I stopped counting the individual combat events after my 2nd year of command. The prince was quiet for a moment. Around them, other nobles had stopped their own conversations to listen. The court was watching. "Perhaps I judged humanity too quickly," said finally. "Perhaps," agreed. "Humans make it easy to underestimate us. We prefer it that way, actually. There are advantages to being dismissed." "What advantages?" "Survival," said simply. "If everyone thinks you're weak, they don't see you as a threat. And if they don't see you as a threat, you can survive long enough to prove them wrong when it matters." It was the most honest thing I'd heard him say in public. She saw several nobles exchange glances, reassessing the quiet human they had been ignoring for weeks. Later that night, in their private chambers, confronted him. You could have embarrassed. He was practically begging for it with those questions. Was reviewing some technical diagrams on a, what would that accomplish? He's your cousin, part of the imperial family. Making him feel small doesn't serve our alliance. You're more diplomatic than most diplomats. I learned a long time ago that you don't have to prove you're dangerous if everyone already knows. He set down the pirates spread the word for us. Now every raider, every potential threat, knows that attacking vessels also means dealing with humans. That's worth more than 1,000 displays of pride in court. Sat beside him on the couch. They were growing more comfortable with each other, slowly learning how to share space. "My grandmother wants to meet with you privately. She's heard all the reports." "What does she want?" "To understand what humanity really is," said. "To see if this alliance is a partnership or a liability. To know if her granddaughter married a man or a weapon." Was quiet for a long moment. "I'm both. I can be the engineer who helps improve your fleet efficiency. I can be the consort who supports you in court and makes polite conversation with nobles. But if something threatens you, threatens what we're building together." His voice hardened in that way she was learning to recognize. "Then I'm the Commodore who burned 12 raider ships out of space and sent the survivors running with nightmares. Doesn't it frighten you, being both those people?" "It used to," he admitted. When I was younger, I thought I had to choose, be a warrior or be a scholar, be violent or be gentle, but humans have always been contradictory. We're poets who write sonnets and then go to war. We're philosophers who debate ethics and then commit atrocities. We're builders who create beautiful things and then destroy them. It's what makes us human. That sounds lonely. It can be, said, carrying all those contradictions. But it's also what makes us adaptable. We can fit into almost any situation because we contain almost every possibility. The meeting with the Empress happened 3 days later. Was not invited, which worried her. Her grandmother was ancient and wise and completely ruthless when necessary. If she decided was a threat to the empire, marriage or not, he could disappear. Seemed unconcerned. He dressed simply and went to the private audience chamber without hesitation, waited in her quarters, packing, unable to focus on anything else. When returned 2 hours later, he looked tired but unharmed. "What happened?" demanded. "Your grandmother is terrifying," said, pouring himself a drink. "She asked me every question you can imagine and several I didn't expect. She wanted to know about human military doctrine, our political structure, our long-term goals, and my personal history. She missed nothing." "What did you tell her?" "The truth," said, "all of it. There's no point in lying to someone that perceptive. She would know. And she told me that humanity is either the best thing that ever happened to the Empire or the worst. She hasn't decided which yet." He sat down heavily. "She also said that if I ever put you in danger through recklessness, she would have me executed in a manner that would serve as a warning to all future generations." "She threatened you." "She promised me," corrected. "There's a difference. A threat is conditional, a promise is certain. Your grandmother doesn't make threats, she makes statements of fact." Sat beside him. "I'm sorry, she shouldn't have." "No, she should have," interrupted. "She's protecting you. I respect that. If our positions were reversed, I'd do the same thing. Actually, I'd probably be less civilized about it." "What do you mean?" "If someone married into a human family and I thought they might be dangerous, I wouldn't invite them for a polite conversation." His smile was dark. "Humans are more direct about threats." Despite everything, laughed. It was the first time she had really laughed since the pirate attack. "You're saying my grandmother is more civilized than humans." "Your grandmother is more civilized than anyone," said. "She's had 10,000 years of culture to draw on. Humans are still figuring out how to not kill each other at diplomatic functions." Over the following weeks, watched as navigated the imperial court with the same strategic mind he had used in battle. He identified allies and potential opponents. He made careful friendships with key nobles. He shared technical knowledge that improved ship designs while keeping the most advanced human secrets protected. It was masterful. He gave enough to be valuable without making humanity vulnerable. He was friendly without being weak. He accepted insults with grace while making it clear that there were lines that should not be crossed. The court began to change its view of humanity, not quickly but gradually. The old nobles still spoke of human barbarism, but younger members started asking questions about human innovation, about their survival tactics, about their different approach to warfare and technology. When news came of another pirate attack on a trade convoy, was invited to the War Council. It was the first time a human had ever been included in such high-level military planning. Accompanied him, watching as he analyzed the tactical situation with a calm expertise that impressed even the ancient generals. "Your people fight like the galaxy is always trying to kill you," General observed. He was old enough to remember when humans first entered galactic space, young and aggressive and frightening. "That's because it usually is," said. "Humanity had no ancient empire to protect us when we reached the stars. No established allies, no inherited technology, no reputation to rely on. We had to protect ourselves. It made us paranoid and aggressive and extremely good at surviving impossible situations." And now you share these strategies with us. Glanced at before responding. We're allies now. More than allies, we're family. When you marry into a human family, we teach you how to survive. We share what we know because your survival becomes our survival. It's what we do. The general nodded slowly. Perhaps this alliance is more valuable than we first believed. Perhaps agreed. That night found herself unable to sleep. She stood at the window of their chambers, looking out at the palace gardens below. Joined her, standing close enough that their shoulders almost touched. You're changing them, said quietly, changing how they see humanity. I'm just showing them who we really are, said. Not the crude barbarians they imagined, not the dangerous warmongers they feared, just survivors who learned to be good at it. Is that all humans are, survivors? No, he said. We're also dreamers and artists and scientists and explorers, but survival comes first, always. Without that, nothing else matters. Turned to look at him. I thought I married someone ordinary, someone my court could dismiss. You did, said with a slight smile. I am ordinary for a human. And that was beginning to understand, was the terrifying part. 6 months had passed since the pirate engagement. The story had taken on a life of its own, growing with each retelling. In spacer bars from the core worlds to the outer rim, people spoke of the human consort who had destroyed a pirate fleet. Some versions were accurate. Many were wildly exaggerated. All of them contributed to a growing legend. Heard the latest version from a merchant who didn't know she was listening. According to him, had personally piloted a fighter craft into the heart of the pirate formation and detonated a nuclear weapon at point-blank range, somehow surviving the blast. It was ridiculous. It was also being repeated as fact across 3 star systems. She mentioned it to that evening. He laughed, which was happening more often now. They had grown comfortable with each other, learning to share not just space but genuine moments. A fighter craft, he said. I haven't piloted a fighter in 8 years, and if I had detonated a nuke at point-blank range, I definitely wouldn't be here to talk about it. People want their heroes to be larger than life, said. I'm not a hero, I just did what needed to be done. That's what heroes always say. The change in the imperial court was undeniable now. Human delegations were treated with a respect that had been absent before. When human merchants arrived, they were greeted properly rather than dismissed. Young nobles asked questions about human technology and tactics, genuinely interested rather than mockingly curious. Prince had become something close to a friend. He visited their quarters regularly, discussing military history and strategy. Often found them debating the merits of various combat approaches, defending traditional methods while explained human adaptability. Your people have no sense of honor in combat, said during one such discussion. But there was no insult in his voice now, just genuine curiosity. We have honor, replied. We just define it differently. For humans, honor is keeping your people alive. Everything else is secondary. Even if it means using weapons others consider barbaric. Especially then, said. If using a barbaric weapon means my crew goes home to their families, I'll use it without hesitation. That's the honor that matters to us. Considered this, it's a very practical philosophy. Practicality is survival, said, and survival is everything. The Empress summoned and to another private audience. This time was included. They knelt before the ancient ruler, who studied them with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. I have been observing you both, the Empress said, and observing how the court has changed. My nobles respect humanity now, some even fear it. This is good. Your Majesty began. The Empress raised a hand. Let me finish, granddaughter. When I arranged this marriage, I saw it as a political necessity, an alliance with a young, aggressive species that had resources we needed. I did not expect it to reshape our understanding of warfare and survival. She turned her gaze to, You have shown us something we had forgotten. In 10,000 years of peace and stability, we became comfortable, predictable. The pirates knew this. They studied our patterns and exploited them. But you, she smiled, thin and sharp. You reminded us that the galaxy is still dangerous, that comfort can be a weakness, that survival requires constant adaptation. I only did what any human would do, Your Majesty said. Precisely, the Empress replied. And that is what makes humanity so valuable. What you consider normal, we consider extraordinary. Your baseline is our exceptional. This alliance has already made us stronger. She stood and they stood with her. I am expanding the alliance. More human advisors will be integrated into our military structure. Human technology will be studied and, where appropriate, adopted. And you will serve as liaison between our forces. It was a promotion in all but name. Would have real authority now, not just the token respect given to a consort. I am honored, Your Majesty said. See that you earn it, the Empress replied. Humanity has shown us we have much to learn. Teach us well. After they left the audience chamber, Took's hand. It still felt new, this casual intimacy between them, but it felt right. You're reshaping an empire, she said. I'm just being myself, replied. Humanity is reshaping the empire. I'm just the representative they see. Don't be modest, you've changed everything. He stopped walking and turned to face her. We've changed everything. You stood by me when the court could have rejected this. You trusted me during the battle. You've been defending human contributions to nobles who still think we're primitive. This isn't just my accomplishment, it's ours. She realized he was right. She had changed too. The princess who had been so dismissive of humans at their wedding would not recognize herself now. She had learned to see past cultural superiority, to recognize value in different approaches, to understand that ancient did not always mean better. More attacks came in the following months, raiders who had heard the stories but didn't believe them. Each time, human tactics proved effective. Each time, the legend grew. Worked tirelessly, training officers in human strategic thinking, not to replace their traditional methods, but to supplement them. The combination was proving devastatingly effective. Precision, enhanced by human unpredictability, created a hybrid warfare style that confused and frustrated their enemies. Other species in the galaxy began to take notice. The Empire, ancient and powerful but stagnant, was suddenly dynamic again. And humanity, young and aggressive but small, had found a powerful ally. One evening, found on their private balcony, looking up at the stars, she joined him, following his gaze. What are you thinking about? She asked. About how far humanity has come, he said. 3 centuries ago, we were confined to one star system. Now we're helping to reshape one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. It's incredible and terrifying. Why terrifying? Because with power comes responsibility, said. Humanity wanted to be taken seriously, to be respected. Now we are. But that means we can't just think about survival anymore. We have to think about what kind of galaxy we want to create. And what kind is that? One where species can be different without being enemies, he said. Where humans can be aggressive survivors and can be elegant traditionalists, and both can learn from each other. Where diversity is strength rather than weakness. Leaned against him. That's a beautiful dream. Dreams are what humans are good at, said. We dream impossible things and then make them real through sheer stubbornness. Is that what I am to you, an impossible dream? He turned to look at her and his smile was genuine and warm. You were supposed to be a political arrangement, a princess who tolerated me for the sake of alliance. Instead, you became someone I actually care about, someone I want to protect, someone I want to build a future with. So yes, you're an impossible dream that somehow became real. Kissed him, something that still felt new but increasingly natural. When they pulled apart, she smiled. I thought I was marrying the most boring human in the galaxy. You did, said. I'm completely ordinary for a human. That's what your court is still learning. What they saw as extraordinary is just normal for us. Every human carries those contradictions, that survival instinct, that capacity for violence and gentleness. I'm not special. You're special to me. Well, that's different, he said with a grin. The months turned into years. The alliance deepened and expanded. Human innovation combined with refinement created technologies neither species could have developed alone. Trade flourished. Cultural exchange became common. Young studied at human universities, and human scholars learned from ancient archives. The pirates that had once plagued the border regions became scarce. Word had spread too far. Attacking vessels meant facing human retaliation, and no amount of plunder was worth that risk. His legend continued to grow despite his efforts to remain modest. He became a symbol of the alliance, proof that humans could not just coexist but thrive together. Statues were proposed. Songs were written. Young officers in both fleets studied his tactics. He hated all of it, which found endlessly amusing. "I'm just a retired commodore who married a princess," he complained after yet another ceremony honoring his contributions. "You're the man who changed an empire's understanding of warfare," corrected. "Accept it." "I'd rather be back in engineering, designing better power systems." "You can do both." And he did. Split his time between military consultation and technical research, always more comfortable with equations and ship designs than ceremonies and accolades. But he fulfilled his duties because that's what humans did. They adapted, survived, and served. One night 5 years after their wedding, woke to find already awake, standing at the window. She joined him, and he put his arm around her shoulders. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Just thinking about how strange life is," he said. 5 years ago, I was a retired officer trying to adjust to civilian life. Now I'm a consort to a princess, a military advisor to an empire, and apparently a legend." "Regrets?" "None," he said immediately. "This wasn't what I expected, but it's better than I hoped. I found purpose again, and I found you." "Smooth talker." "I learned from the best," he said with a smile. "Your diplomatic corps taught me a lot." They stood together in comfortable silence, looking out at the palace grounds. Somewhere out in the galaxy, raiders were avoiding space. Young officers were studying hybrid tactics. Engineers were developing combined technologies. And two species were learning that they were stronger together than apart. The legend of the human consort who saved a princess and changed an empire would continue to grow. Stories would be told and retold, each version more dramatic than the last. But the truth was simpler and more profound. A human had married a princess. He had shown her people what humanity really was, not barbaric or crude, but adaptive and resilient and endlessly innovative. He had proven that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one everyone underestimates. And in doing so, he had not just changed an empire. He had changed the galaxy's understanding of what humanity could be. Looked at her husband, this quiet man who contained such contradictions, the engineer who could become a warrior, the peaceful scholar who carried weapons of last resort, the modest advisor who had reshaped military doctrine. She had witnessed his true might and knew she had married a legend. But more importantly, she had married a partner, a friend, and eventually someone she loved. And that, more than any legend, was what mattered.